Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to Kardec Radio. This is the Sunday evening, 6 p.m. daily prayer program. My name's Teresa Castro, and I am the host for the Sunday evening prayer. Thank you all for joining. Welcome. So glad to be here with you all again. So today, before we begin our prayer, our message is taken from the Spirit's book. Okay, and in particular, we're looking at the chapter of intervention of the spirits in the corporeal world. And in particular, questions number 536 to 540. So, in the first question, Kardec is asking the spirits if disturbances in the elements of nature, so disturbances, storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, are they by chance or do they have a purpose? And the spirits respond, everything has a reason, right? We hear this. They say everything has a reason for being and nothing occurs without God's permission. They also tell us that sometimes these phenomena of nature, right, these disturbances, the volcanoes, the earthquakes, they occur for a reason directly related to humankind. But most frequently, they have no other purpose than to reestablish the balance and harmony of the physical forces of nature. They also tell us that nature spirits exert an influence over the elements in order to rouse, calm, or direct them. And I think this is interesting of note in part of their answer, that God does not act directly on God does not act directly on nature, but has devoted agents. So it's these nature spirits, so to speak, on every degree of the world scales. So again, the answer, they say that God does not act directly on nature, but has devoted agents on every degree of the world's scales. So this is why the spirits are telling us that these nature spirits do, in fact, exert an influence on these these disturbances of the elements of the earth. So then in 537, question 537, Kardec brings this question. He says, the mythology of the ancients is entirely based on spiritist ideas, with the difference that they regarded spirits as deities, and they represented those gods or spirits as having special attributes. Thus, some were in charge of the wind, others the lightning, while others presided over vegetation. Is this belief entirely without foundation? And the spirits answer, it is well founded, yet it is still far from the truth. So what we can understand is that this idea is not entirely true. It may be part of a truth, or it may be a relative truth, but it is not an absolute truth. And they go on to tell us that these spirits do not actually inhabit the earth, but they preside over and direct its phenomena according to their particular attributes. And then they bring us some consolation by saying Someday you will have an explanation for all these phenomena, and you will comprehend them better. Okay, and then in 538, the spirits tell us that these spirits who preside over the phenomena of nature are spirits who will incarnate as humans or who have been incarnated humans. They go on to say that their placement in the hierarchy of spirits depends on their role, just like us. The closer they are materially, they're of a lower order spirit versus intelligent. So I think this is interesting. It can kind of help us to understand many things, and also validate what we already know. We know the more coarse, the more material, the lower vibration, lower order spirit. But it also tells us that what is happening as above, so below. So what's happening on a higher plane happens on a lower plane as well, just at a lower vibration, a lower degree. They go on to say that their action in phenomena occurs with many spirits, not just one acting on its own. So therefore, we can see in that last question about why it's not an absolute truth is because this idea of spirit of the wind, it's not just one spirit, it's many spirits acting. That could be a part of it. Okay, so then in the last question, 540, Kardec asks, do the spirits who act upon the phenomena of nature do so with full awareness and in virtue of their free will, or out of an instinctive and unreasoning impulse? So, right, he's basically asking, which is a good question we all want to know, do they have free will, or are they just basically operating on reflex? So the spirits answer, some in one way, so some of them instinctively, reflexively, others in the other. So perhaps a will is involved as well. And then they go on to help us better understand. They said, let's make a comparison. Consider the myriads of animals that little by little build up islands and archipelagos in the ocean, right? So the archipelagos are those multiple ocean islands that are not connected but pretty close together. All right, so he goes on. Do you believe that there is no providential purpose in this, and that this transformation of the surface of the globe is not necessary for its overall harmony? And we would say that we know that there's a reason for everything, that nothing happens by chance. So we're going to say we know that there is a purpose. So he continues, yet all this is accomplished by animals of the lowest degree, while they are providing for their own needs and without perceiving that they are God's instruments. In the same way, the least advanced spirits are useful to the general whole. While preparing for life and before having full awareness of their acts and free will, and again, he's talking about these least advanced spirits, they act upon certain phenomena in which they are the unwitting agents. At first, they execute. Later, when their intelligence is more developed, they command and direct the matters of the material world. Still later, they direct the things of the moral world. Hence, everything is useful. Everything in nature is linked together, from the primitive atom to the archangel, who also began as only an atom, an admirable law of harmony, which your limited minds cannot yet grasp in its entirety. Exclamation mark. So they help us to better understand, but they point out we're still limited in our process of evolution to entirely grasp how the workings, the ins and outs of all of this phenomena of nature. But they give us hope because they say someday we will better comprehend and we will better understand. So I think it's very important here that they say that everything in nature is linked together. And I've come across in my readings 3 other questions where they say this exact phrase, everything in nature is linked together. So they really want us to hear this phrase. And if you're curious, the other questions are number 573, 604, 607, and then of course 540. All 4 of those answers contain that phrase, everything in nature is linked together. And the importance is for us, we are a part of nature, so we are linked together, which helps us to better understand why without charity there is no salvation, right? We cannot free each other without helping each other. And this is true charity, right? It's not without gain, not without reward, to gain money, whatever. So it's charity in its true sense, benevolence toward all, indulgence, and forgiveness. Beautiful, right? Very helpful. And also the spirits remind us often, if we want to better understand God, we just need to look to nature. If we better want to understand the workings of life, we need to look to nature. And so, if you will allow me, I would like to use for our prayer today a prayer that involves nature, that comes out of this book, which is the Memoirs of Father Germain. It's a beautiful book. And it was psychographed. Well, I guess it would, I don't think psychography would be the right word to use, because Father Germain, the spirit of Father Germain, told this story through an unconscious medium. And then Amalia Domingo Soler, who is a medium, actually wrote the book as this unconscious medium told that Father Germain channeled through this unconscious medium. Very interesting, right? But it turns out that Father Germain, Spirit Father Germain, was a spiritual guide for Amalia Domingo Soler. But that's how this book was written. That's how they tell us. It was through this unconscious medium, and then Amalia Domingo Soler actually hand wrote what the unconscious medium spoke, which was delivered through Father Germain. So who is Father Germain? So what's interesting and what we should understand is Father Germain, his last incarnation, which what this book is about, he was alive in the 17th century. So this was before Kardec. This is before the codification of the books. This is, there was no established Spiritist doctrine. And this man, Father Germain, was a Catholic priest. His story is interesting because he really doesn't know his beginnings. He was told by the priesthood that his mother died during childbirth and that he was left in their care to be raised. He was never able to really validate this story, but nonetheless, that's what he understood. Well, he wanted to know more, okay? And so, networking with the priesthood, he was able to gain access to some books that were under lock and key, right? Not everybody was able to read. He never talks about the names of these books or what even exactly he learned, but he calls them the ancient books, all right? So he came to understand the universal truths, right? And what he saw was kind of the imperfections in the Catholic Church of that time. There was a lot of abuse of power and, greed, desire for financial gain. And so it was interesting because he really lived, and even as you read this book, you hear the Spiritist doctrine really kind of shining through. He said things like, do good for goodness sake. And so he, even though he saw these imperfections in the church, he was willing to take that pause and say, there must be a reason why I incarnated in this particular life setting. And so he didn't become rebellious. He realized his mission was to help people, that he was in a position to help people to see the real truth in what he called practicing true priesthood. Anyhow, after he had read all these ancient books, which he said he spent a full year reading these books day in and day out, he was meditating at the foot of a mountain, and he said this prayer, which I think was very beautiful. So I'd like to share it with all of you and use it as our prayer for today. So I invite you to settle in, relax the physical body, open the heart, relax the mind. And here's the prayer. Where is God? I had asked the stars, and they replied to me, are you blind? Do you not see the reflection of his gaze in our light? Wherever light radiates, God is there. Where is the omnipotent one? I asked the birds, and they chirped so lovingly and answered, here is God. Where can I find the Supreme Being? I asked the clouds, and a small one full of rain answered, within us, because with our showers we make the earth fertile. Where can I feel the Creator? I asked the flowers. They answered, within our perfume, because our fragrance is the breath of God. Nature is so beautiful. And let us allow this prayer, simple prayer of nature, wash over us. Let us take the pause. Let us contemplate. Let us look around and look for God, which does require some effort and repetition. Thank you. And so, with that prayer, we ask permission to close this prayer session. And we thank all those who gathered with us, including those who may have listened to this on demand. I wish you all a good week. Be healthy, be safe, and remember to help somebody else. Blessings, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same station, Kardec Radio. Always nourishing our souls. Bye-bye.